Speed of Life is our small tribute to the loss of the wonderful David Bowie, and also a reflection that since we finished our podcast at the end of 2015, this being the first of 2016, much has changed. But I'm very pleased to say that Leicester City remain top, remarkably, of the Premier League. So hurrah to the Foxes. So a quick introduction. We're actually changing the format of the LawyerFair podcast very slightly. We did a wonderful batch of daily podcasts last year, reaching number 100, I think, by the week before Christmas. But I have to tell you, for our small team, the delivery of a daily podcast was quite a challenge. So we have changed slightly. We're going to be doing 2 a week this year, and we're going to be splitting them as well. So there will be a legal services podcast, of which the first, or a podcast about legal services, of which the first will be next Tuesday. That is February the 9th, I think. We've got Chris Bull joining us there. But on Thursdays, we're going to deliver a business podcast. So 2 a week for you, lovely listener, to maximise the quality whilst perhaps minimising a little the quantity. So today's guest is Kevin Horn. Kevin is the CEO of the NWES group he's based up in Norwich. But Kevin is a serious aficionado about enterprise agencies. And I'm going to kind of deliver the question to him of what have enterprise agencies ever done for business? Because I think one of the challenges actually for enterprise agencies is that we just don't know a lot about them. So it's a chat with Kevin. I do drop in a couple of rather pointed comments about his support of Norwich City, but aside from that, it's high value information from Kevin, and I hope you enjoy the podcast and the ones we're going to do in the near future. Thanks for listening. So Kevin, welcome. I've given you a little introduction there, but thank you very much for joining us today.
A pleasure.
Now, aside from discussing the travails of Norwich City, which I'm not going to put you through on a public forum, we are here to discuss what enterprise agencies can do for business. And what's your intro? If I was to ask you that question, Kevin, where would you take me?
Well, I suppose the very first thing is that a lot of people don't even understand what enterprise agencies are, so I think a little bit of background may be useful. Very quickly is that enterprise agencies were set up in the 1980s with a view to help towns where there were quite large redundancies at the time. Since then, we've managed to thrive, and we've been going for over 30 years, and we are private companies, but we operate as social enterprises, so hence we reinvest all of our profits into our service for people. And quite simply, we're here to help people start a business and to grow their business in many different ways.
Well, let's just go back a little then on what you just said, Kevin, and we'll go into the detail of how businesses can get assistance. But why do you think people don't? Because I confess I'm not, having been in business for quite a while, I'm not entirely clear what enterprise agencies provide.
I think it's partly down to us as a movement, to be honest with you. Because we are all social enterprises, we do not spend a lot of money in marketing and PR. And as such, there's never been a coherent national program or advertising or marketing campaign which has been seeking to raise awareness. The reality is we get our referrals in from people who have either used our service in the past or intermediaries such as banks, accountants, local authorities, etc., where people come to them and they then signpost them on to us. So I think the reality is pretty poor marketing from ourselves.
Right. Well, that's a very fair response. Okay, so just give us an outline of what can actually be achieved by working with an enterprise agency.
Well, what I would say is if you've got an idea for a business or you're already in business and you've got some problems that you're coming up against, then go and talk to your local enterprise agency. They are there to help. Nearly every single service that they provide is free to the client, so that's all good for them. And what we can do is we provide independent, impartial advice, training, mentoring, often access to finance, and occasionally grants, although there's not many of them around nowadays. And then we can also help to overcome any particular issues that a growing business may have too. And in many cases, we can provide premises for businesses as well.
Wow. What stage, you mentioned there, businesses that are going concerns, and what kind of stage of a business are you dealing with generally?
The vast majority, I would suggest that, say 3 out of 4 people who come to us are pre-start or very early start within the first 6 months or so, because that's when many of their queries and need for help and assistance arise. And about 25% of the people who come to us are post-start, and again, the majority of those will be within the first 2 years, although we've got clients who have been with us for 20 plus years and they keep coming to us asking for help, advice, or almost like a shoulder to cry on sometimes, and to help them through any particular new things that they may be coming up against.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? So obviously people are valuing you from the beginning and staying with you in terms of accessing that support. Would you say there's a consistent reason why people contact you, or a consistent type of service that you provide?
People contact us for all kinds of reasons, but whilst there's, nowadays there's an awful lot of information online, and the reality is that's pretty stark. It doesn't give you any advice, and what it just tells you is facts. And so most of the people who come to us are looking for some kind of reassurance or support to say, is my idea good enough for me to start in business, or what are the areas that I haven't yet thought about? So that's where the kind of average inquiry that we have comes to us along those kind of lines. And what we can do, whilst we would never tell somebody they should start in business, or indeed they should not start in business, that's up to the individual to come to their own decision on that. Our role is to give them and help them and provide them with all the facts, the ideas, the thoughts, the pros and cons, so they can make a good, informed decision. I think that's where we come in, and that's the real expertise that we can provide.
Well, I think you make a very good point about the internet, because I always view there's a wonderful surplus of information out there about anything and everything, isn't there? But I always view it a little bit like going into a restaurant where the menu has about 3,000 items on it. It's sometimes difficult actually to cut through and see what's relevant to you. And I guess actually sitting down with someone, actually talking to someone through your individual issue is going to be a far more beneficial process than trying to glean information from the variety of sources online.
Indeed, and the reality is that all of our advisors and trainers that we have actually been there and done it, so they've actually set up and run their own business,
right.
And so they have the experience. They sometimes bear the scars of business, but also they've reached the heights as well, and that information, that support, the fact that somebody has been there and done it, I think adds the credibility to what we're doing.
Yeah.
And as you say, on the internet there is no filter as such. It just gives you opinion or facts, but it doesn't really say to you, yep, I've been there, I've done it, I've come across the problems that you're now coming across, and here's how I helped to solve them.
Yeah, and how does people listen to this podcast from all over the place? How do they find their local enterprise agency?
Right, well, there are a whole variety. If you're going to use the internet, then I would suggest a good starting point is the National Enterprise Network, who have a whole host of information on there about the support that's available, and all of the details of enterprise agencies are on there. And the other main area I would say look at is the Cavendish Consortium, and it's cavendishenterprise.org.uk, because there what we have is a national programme of support which is valued at between £2,000 and £5,000 for each individual business, and that is free for the client to access.
Well, Kevin, I'm going to lead you into a slightly different area here with this next question, because you've helped over 15,000 new businesses, and people can find out more about the enterprise agency through those channels you've just mentioned. But there was a couple of things that I noticed on your LinkedIn profile, God bless LinkedIn, that NWES has won a number of awards for being the most enterprising place and also the best companies to work for. And I just wanted to take you down that channel a little bit in terms of, what have you done? Why are you winning those awards? What's been the thinking process? Because clearly there's been a plan in place to arrive at that level of recognition. I'd be interested to know how that's taken place and what you've been doing.
Okay, all right, well, I'll start with the latter one first, which is best companies to work for. I think for the last 5 years now, we've been in the top 100 companies in the UK to work for, and that is as voted for by our staff. It's the Sunday Times publishes this every February, and so we've been lucky enough to be in that top 100 for the last 5 years. The idea for that was, well, like any company, I've run many companies over the years and started them and sold on companies, the biggest asset, as far as I'm concerned, are the people who work for you. And so my mantra has always been, if your employees are happy, they will do a good job for you. So we decided, okay, we want to make life as best we can for our employees, so what can we do? We've decided the only way we're going to do that is to ask them, and it's no good me asking them. It has to be done independently and anonymously. And so we decided to use best companies, and over the years we've used the results that we get every year from those surveys to improve the offer to our employees, which at the same time has meant that the business has been much more successful. I mean, indeed, last year was our record ever year in 33 years of trading.
Well, it's not rocket science, isn't it, to know that if you can create happy staff and people who like to come to work, they're gonna translate that and transmit that to the people that they're dealing with. But was it an actual strategic? I mean, did you sit down at one stage and think that this is what I want to aim for? These are the plans I'm putting in place to try and get us into that level of profile.
The answer is yes. To be honest with you, we like to be good employers, but I think most employers would say that too. But we thought, well, okay, we need to benchmark ourselves against others, and there are a lot of badges you can get out there, invest in people and things such as that, but it doesn't really tell you, it doesn't benchmark you. And so we wanted to understand where we sat in the overall kind of rankings. And I'm very much of an opinion that if you're going to do something, there's only two places in the market to be. You're either the best or the cheapest. We don't want to be the cheapest, so we want to be the best. So we thought, okay, our strategy is to be best at everything, and that's got to include being the best employer that we possibly can. So it's very much a strategy, and as a result, to be honest with you, we've got a lot of good publicity. But more importantly, when we do advertise for new members of staff now, we get inundated with really good quality applicants, and an awful lot of them say, well, you're one of the best companies to work for, hence I want to work for you.
Yeah, it's a virtuous circle, isn't it? I must confess, LawyerFair is a fairly early stage business. We've only been going about 18 months or so. And I do scribble down occasionally some of the ideas that emerge from the Sunday Times Best Companies to Work For list. Because, some great innovative ideas. And the competition for talent, we've discussed it many times on this podcast, and I'm sure you have this issue as well, but the competition for talent is extreme, isn't it? You've got to provide a real incentive for people to want to work for you.
Indeed, and that is exactly it. As I said, I want to be the best, and to be the best, you've got to have the best employees. So, as I said, it's that virtuous circle. The more you can give, the more you get.
Yeah, well, that's brilliant. Kevin, I dropped this one on your toes again at the beginning of the broadcast, but we have a little section we're introducing to this podcast called Magic Moments. And the wonderful Polly, who edits this for me, slips in that little wonderful tune.
Moments, memories we've been sharing. Magic moments when two hearts are.
So, over the many years, and you've done so much and achieved so much, are there any magic moments or a magic moment you look back on, or you think that you're currently delivering that chimes? And I'm not, as I say, I don't want you to delve into the darkness of Norwich City's current defensive performance.
No, with Norwich City, I think being a supporter is a lifelong sentence, to be honest with you. You get one good year in 10. But no, my magic moment, I would suggest, it's difficult, but I think the thing that epitomises everything that we do, and we support a lot of people, as you said, thousands of people. I was with a guy who had helped us set up in business. And this was a guy who came from a pretty deprived area of Great Yarmouth, actually, which in itself is quite a deprived town. And he had no education, didn't really know where to go. He came to see us, had an idea, quite a simple idea really, but we helped him, we supported him, took him on. And he came back to see us about 4 or 5 years later and actually arrived in a Bentley, which was great. And he said, can you spare me an hour? And so I said, okay. So we went out in the Bentley, we went around where he grew up. And he was telling me how he'd done so well in his particular journey and how his business was being so successful. And we kind of drew up outside this awful 1960s housing estate in Yarmouth, which is renowned for being not a good place to live. And that's where he grew up. Yeah. And he told me, he said, I come past here every single day. He says, because the motivation for me is I don't end up where I started.
Yes.
And that for me was a magic moment. And he said, "You have helped me to understand what I can do and not what I can't do." And he said that is the thing that motivates him. And I thought, wow, that kind of, all the people who have helped, all the people who have supported, that thing has never left me. That this guy's life had changed, and he reminded himself of where he came from every single day.
Yeah, well, there are many reasons for doing business, making money, meeting people, whatever. But stories like that and things that you can say, well, that was a real achievement. Is what gets you out of bed in the morning, really, isn't it?
Indeed, yeah, very much so.
Well, on that very happy note, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
An absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Not at all. And we will put some links and some website URLs, etc., at the foot of the podcast notes that we will supply. But Kevin, thanks again. Good morning to you, and good luck to Norwich. I can tell you, as a Forest fan, I have no right to ridicule your difficult times, but it's always good fun.
Indeed, I don't mind. I'm a true football fan.
Yeah, good luck. Thanks, Kevin.
An absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Cheerio. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.